Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. You guys know that already. I know because you're all awesome. You've been here for years and you came back for more, folks. It's a beautiful day. We have a fantastic guest, and I'm blessed to be here. Thank you so much for everything you folks have done, all of the sharing, the liking, the subscribing, all the DMs. My goodness. I do have my proper coffee mug with me today. I used a Batman one a few episodes ago, and man, did you guys let me have it. But I love that you guys care. I really do. I love that you care about the IU mug. It keeps me all warm and fuzzy inside. Folks, thank you. Because if you're not out there doing everything you're doing, I can't sit here and do what I'm doing. So really do appreciate you. You all know what time it is. Before we get rolling, we got to pay a couple of bills. And so it's time to take a sip of our preferred beverage. Really hot because I just made it on the fly really fast. Wow, good stuff, folks. You all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Look them up. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. Absolutely fantastic cup of coffee, folks. You got to try them. You got to check it out. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is a huge, huge reason why we support them. You all know how important veterans are to us here at the Power of Man, and they're important to them too. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go look them up. And when you get some of that real beautiful, fresh, delicious ground coffee, tell them Power Man sent you. I'm going to get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this young buck on the other side of the table from me here. All right. Oh, I think we're ready to go. I'll be drinking that throughout. It's a good thing I got a full cup because I mean this guy showed up with like all this energy and he's bright and I'm telling you, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to keep up with him today, guys. We're gonna do what we can. All right, a little bit of faith. Please welcome to the podcast, pastor and author of You Need Friends, Reclaim Your God-Given Design for Community and Remedy Your Loneliness for Good. Please welcome Jake Thurston to the program. Jake, how you doing, brother?
I'm so good today, Rory. How are you?
Yeah, like I said before, better than I deserve, man. I really and truly, it's a good day though, isn't it?
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right.
Fellow Hoosier. It's rare for me to find or even talk to other people from Indiana when I'm living out here in South Dakota. So it's just kindred spirits already.
Absolutely. That's so crazy. I saw that in your show notes and I'm like, wait, I gotta ask if this is a typo. But yeah, that's great. That is absolutely great. Listen, Jake, I know we want to talk about the book and this loneliness thing that you're going to talk about. Is going to hit really hard with some of the guys in my audience. I already know that because it is in fact an epidemic going on, especially with men right now.
Hmm.
So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about it. But before we dive into all this, tell everybody, who is Jake Thurston? What are you about? Where do you come from besides Indiana? And
Yeah.
what brings you here today, man?
For sure. Oh man. Wonderful questions. So like you said, my name's Jake, not Jake from State Farm, Jake Thurston. Always have to clarify that. Born and raised in the church in Indiana. I grew up in Fountain City, Indiana, which was just north of Richmond. Part of the Wesleyan denomination my entire life. Jesus has always been a central part of my life. And, I received my call to ministry when I was a sophomore in high school, and haven't turned back since. I went to Indiana Wesleyan University to study for ministry, got my undergraduate and my master's degree there. And all that was so cool, so amazing, so awesome. And a part of my pastoral education program required a 2-year residency, very similar to how doctors have residencies,
Hmm.
uh, very similar for church ministry, being able to have a 2-year apprenticeship to get lots of really awesome hands-on experience before going out into the ministry field. And I landed at a church called the Ransom Church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So that's what brought me all the way out here to the far western part of the Midwest, definitely more west than Midwest, if anything. But I moved out here in 2016, was on staff at that church for 3.5 years. That's where I met the love of my life, Casey, and we were set up on a blind date like mid-July of 2018, I believe, and then we were married 8 months later. So that's a story for another
Wow.
time. I know, pretty impressive,
Wow.
right?
All
Yeah.
right.
I guess I just checked all of her boxes, and we moved on from there. So that was awesome. But then in June of 2019, I got a job offer to move back to Indiana Wesleyan University. And this is a large part of like why I wrote the book, core part of my story. Um, I've always had a passion for college students and young adults. Like I loved ministering to my peers when I was a chaplain at Indiana Wesleyan, when I was a student body chaplain there during my time there, and even when I moved to Ransom, like I loved reaching young adults still. And so I always wondered, could I see myself in higher education? Could I see myself moving back to IWU and teaching and training others for pastoring, ministry, education, all that stuff? And so when that job opportunity opened up, we had to jump on it. I had to see if this is what God had in store for me. So we moved back out to IWU in 2019, and a lot of it was really awesome. A part of it, I love being able to hang out with students all the time, to start teaching and really live out my calling in that way. But obviously, we know what happened after 2019. 2020 came next, and COVID-19, man, it did a number on me. As you've already alluded to, Rory, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. I'm one of the most extroverted people you could ever meet. So when this pandemic flew in and we had no clue what was going on, and I was forced to stay at home for 2 months straight, it did a number on me. I was the most anxious, most depressed I had ever been in my life. And so I really hit rock bottom during that season. And it was in that moment, it just forced Casey and I to really realize like, we're not where we need to be. I'm not doing what I need to be doing. And the Lord really gave me this realization that as much as I love the university, I love the local church more. And from that moment on, we're like, hey, what would it take for us, one, to get back to South Dakota? That's where Casey's from. That's what we were expecting our first kid at the time. We wanted to get closer to
Uh,
her family. So, how do we get back home to South Dakota, even though I was born in Indiana? But then, second, how can I get back into pastoring in the local church? Well, we talked with a number of different mentors and just see like what options were out there, and church planting is what came to the foreground. So, church planting is basically like starting a business from the ground up, except it's a church, right? So, we were starting a whole new congregation from nothing. And we looked at a number of places within an hour radius of Sioux Falls, and we landed on Vermillion, South Dakota, which is a small town of about 12,000 people, home to the University of South Dakota. So now you can see where all these pieces come back together and they collide
yeah.
in major ways. So we moved to Vermillion June 1st of 2021 to start planting Resilient Church. So it's a church that I lead and founded. And we're coming up on 3 years of doing ministry since we launched in August 22. We celebrate our third birthday this August. And we average right around 100 on Sunday morning services, with about 60% of them to 70% of them being college students and young adults. So
Well,
to see how those two worlds really collided here is just definitely a testament to God's faithfulness on our life and that calling and passion. And I continue to teach. I'm an adjunct professor at USD. I teach New Testament every other year here. Continue to teach with Indiana Wesleyan's online programs, as well as with Wesley Seminary on a couple of other courses there. So that's been amazing and awesome, and we love it here, and hope to be here as long as God has us. So.
wow. And now you have three kids, right? At
Yeah,
this
now we
point,
have three
two.
kids.
I mean,
Amelia's 4, Beckett is, oh, sorry, I'm going out of order. Amelia's 4, Adeline is 2, and then Beckett is 4 months.
yeah. Don't say sorry to me. They're the ones who are going to take you to task on that.
That's so true. Oh, they already
Your
did.
wife's going to come in from the other room and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Come on,
So
come back and help me. Why are you here?
beautiful. Okay, that's great. There's a couple things that kind of flew through there. The first one, you just sort of casually threw it out there that you got your calling to the ministry when you were a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, I talked to a lot of pastors. I talked to a lot of men of God on my show, on all my shows actually, and I don't know if I've ever heard anybody just say like it hit me that early. Was there an
Mhm.
event or something that happened, or was it just a natural like, well, of course this is what I'm going to do because it's always made sense, or
Great
what was that
question.
like? Yeah.
For sure. It was that fall of 2009. I was really growing in my faith for the first time in my life. And honestly, it was after I'd experienced a lot of freedom from a pornography addiction, really kicking off
Mm.
in junior high, really finally found freedom early on in 2009. And then it was towards that back half of 2009 where just these random thoughts of like, hey, you should go into youth ministry. You should go to the church. That I had no reason to think. I had no desire to do that. Why am I thinking about that? So that's clearly an impression by the Holy Spirit, nudging me towards that direction. Well, then December of 2009, my youth group went on a Wesleyan youth convention. So they do these every 4 years where they bring thousands of teenagers from across the country together for these events. And there's a number of different rallies and messages that are shared, and people's lives are transformed. They come to know Jesus for the first time. And often they have a message there that's really geared towards the teens who might be called to full-time vocational ministry. And I have no clue what the speaker said during that session, but I'll never forget the response element, where basically by the end of it, he said, if you believe that God is calling you to full-time vocational ministry, come up to the stage and stand in front of your peers right now as a declaration of your yes. And I couldn't shake it. I knew without a doubt that it's what I had to do. And
Wow.
so I went up there. There were too many people on stage, so I just stayed on the floor, but still facing that crowd, um, giving my yes, and I haven't turned back since that day.
I mean, that's amazing, honestly, to be that strong and that devoted already at that young age. I mean, it must have been very, very clear for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Very
Mhm.
cool. Love that. Okay, then the other thing that really popped out at me really hard, you did church planting. I've
Yeah.
heard that phrase, and I had no idea that that was the circumstance around you. And I apologize for not finding that in my research. I'm going to have to, work on my skills a little bit here,
There's really
because
only
that,
one place on the internet that highlights that story, so I'd be surprised
yeah.
if you found it. But
Well, that got by me somehow, brother. And so now I'm like, all right, you founded it, you named it. Why resilient?
Mm. So obviously, we're really drawn to reaching the college student and young adult of Vermillion. We want to reach as many people in Vermillion as we can,
Hmm.
but when you look at a college town like USD, small town with a huge university, the stats are crazy. 58% of the population are under the age of 30.
Hmm.
23%, or sorry, the median age of Vermillion is 23 years old. So that tells you like this city is a
Wow.
hub for the next generation, right? So we wanted to plant a church with a culture and a vision and a mission that really could resonate with this next generation because that's who we're passionate about reaching.
Yeah.
And the term a resilient disciple was coined by Barna Research Group. So Barna is does a lot of research and statistics around Christianity and culture and the church, and they put out a book called Faith for Exiles that talked about how there's this sliver, this 10% of young adults between the ages of 18 to 28 who they label as resilient disciples who just have a vibrant faith in the midst of all these other Gen Zers who tend to be very religiously unaffiliated. And if they are affiliated, they're very lackadaisical in their faith. What are the qualities of that 10% resilient disciples that just show that they're on fire, that despite all of the hardships they face for opting into Jesus, because it's harder for a young person to be a Christian than any other generation because of the pushback and the unique circumstances of the cultures they live in.
Yep.
We wanted to plant a church where from the get-go, from the name, you literally search it up on Google, it says Resilient Church. Our mission is to form vibrant lives that withstand hardship for teens and for young adults and college students who have more anxiety than ever before, more depression than ever before, more pressure for them to live a certain way than ever before, for more um, uh, persecution for their faith. They get lots of pushback. If you're opting into that, there's it's much more of this moral relativism is what a lot of Gen Zers tend to adhere by. So you opting into faith and religion seems countercultural to them. We wanted to say we're going to form you into a disciple of Jesus, where you have a vibrant life that is better than any other life you could possibly pursue that's going to help you withstand these life hardships that come your way. And we just believe that is the message of the gospel that can really resonate with our young people. And so that's why we named it the way that we did. And that's why we have the mission statement that we do. Everything really harners around that statement.
Nice. And that makes total sense to me now. And I was like, okay, resilient against what? Where's that coming from? What's that based on? So, man, that makes good sense. You really, as a young person, you really do have to be resilient to what's coming at you in this
Mhm.
world right now. That's a
Yeah,
that's a beautiful name.
thank you.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. All right. So the so you're a pastor. You wrote a book. All
I
right.
did.
It's interesting. It's about you need friends. It's about loneliness. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, a pastor writing a book. I can almost close my eyes and come up with like five things it's about. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
never would have guessed it was about overcoming loneliness. So can't wait to hear where that comes from.
For sure. Yeah, here's the story. Really goes back to high school. I've always been someone just with a radar that's gauging to see who's the lonely or the outcast around me. Like one of my top five strengths on Strengths Finder, Clifton Strengths Quest, if you've ever
Yeah.
taken that, is an includer. I love bringing people together, and my heart breaks for the person who's on the outskirts. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to have their say. I want to make sure that they're connected. I'm just hardwired for that. Really passionate about friendship and community, always have been. So come, 2015, I start my master's, and I stumbled upon a topic or just this stat that said that America was amongst the loneliest nations in the world, that we are enduring a loneliness epidemic is the phrase that was tossed out there. This is 2015, y'all. Like, this is 5 years before stay-at-home orders, like before it's more mainstream now to talk about this.
Right.
I feel like the loneliness epidemic's a little bit more well known now. Um, and that just was crazy to me. We have so much here in the States. How could we be so lonely? Like, so that just resonated with me on the soul level. But then in the exact same semester, I also stumbled upon a long lost Christian practice called spiritual friendship. It's a long running tradition in church history, but there's one particular monk by the name of Saint Alred of the monastery called Rivaux in the 12th century, who writes this treatise called Spiritual Friendship. And it is the most beautiful articulation of what it means to be friends with other believers and with God, and how to cultivate those friendships, and how actually it is through our friendships with other believers that can transform our life and grow us closer to Jesus. So I had this crazy thought. How could the local church remedy our loneliness epidemic through the rediscovery of spiritual friendship? Uh, I mean, that sounds like a pretty dang awesome master's thesis to me. So I went on to do that project, but I just couldn't shake it. I was like convinced that God put me on this earth to spread this message of our God-given design for community. So I went on to write some blogs about it. I went on to give some keynote presentations about it, and I was so moved. I wanted to do extensive research on it. I started my doctorate of ministry in 2018, worked on that for 6 years, and just finished my dissertation last August in 2024 to do this in-depth research project about how spiritual friendship can remedy loneliness amongst young adults between the ages of 18 to 24. Um, all so that it can culminate in writing this book that I have. So this is the culmination of almost 10 years worth of research about the devastating effects that loneliness brings to our minds, body, and souls, the surprising benefits the community and friendships bring to our minds, bodies, and souls, the different cultural effects of just the world we live in, our American culture that oddly enough values a lifestyle that just naturally isolates you. So how do we combat that? But then,
Right.
part two of the book is it's all about spiritual friendship. What does it mean to view Jesus as our friend and to let that be the template for all of our other friendships? What it means to be friends with other believers, how to pick those out, recognizing that if we are who we're with, the relational neuroscience says that you are the sum of the people closest to you. So therefore, how can we be intentional in cultivating these spiritual friendships with others so that we can ultimately grow in vulnerability, confession, taking everything out from underneath the rug? So that's the flyover view of what this book is about, and hoping that people can remedy their loneliness for good.
Okay, and you keep doing this. I mean, you put so much into your dissertation when you give it to me. I'm like, taking notes. I'm like, wait, got to go back here. I got to go back here because I'm not going to
I
interrupt you, man. You're on a roll, and I love
know,
it.
I know.
It's
I can't stop talking about it.
you're a great you're a great guest. Okay, first of all, let me just tell you because you're just, hey, can you share something with me? And you're not like, yeah,
I'm
you're
an
like
open book.
boom, and I'm just sitting there going,
Love it.
all right, this is great. Anyway, let me back up again for just a second because you did your master's thesis on this. So I'm already blown away by the fact that, I mean, I'm an older guy. I've talked to dozens, at least, to be realistic, at least dozens of guys about what they've done for their master's thesis, and their PhD projects, everything else, right? You did it for your you came out and you put it into action.
Hmm.
You actually took what you claimed was a good thing in your master's thesis, came out and actually put it into action. Most people are like, wouldn't this be great if we had, like underground tunnels and world peace and whatever? And they have no intention ever of doing anything other than just getting the grade,
Yeah.
getting the check mark and then moving on with their diploma. You
Hmm.
took it and loved it so much that you've done it.
Yeah.
And you not only wrote the book, but it sounds like you're putting this into practice in your church that
Hmm.
planted.
We are. Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I mean, how do you begin talking to, you're already facing the resilience issue. You're already talking to young people. You're focusing on Gen Zers. That's who your crowd is, demographically with where you
Mhm.
chose. You're already fighting the outside world. Now you're going in and you're you're building up a congregation with the idea of this spiritual friendship. How do you
Mhm.
incorporate all that together?
Yeah,
I'm really curious.
for sure. Spiritual friendship is the backbone of our church. I mean, Jesus is the backbone of our church, of course.
Of
But
course.
in this current climate, especially in like response to the major church growth trend and megachurch celebrity pastor era, lots of Gen Zers are preferring smaller congregations where warm is the new cool. That's the phrase I'm hearing. They are drifting towards churches where they feel warm. Like it's not about all the bells and the whistles and the crowds and the stuff. They want to feel seen. They want to feel loved. They want to be a part of a community that is warm and loving, right? So it's all about community. It's all about making it feel like a family. And so for me, I'm so wired for this message of resilience and for spiritual friendship and the need for community to where like we say if you want the most out of this church, you have to find your people. You have to find community. It's not just Sunday service alone. The people and I can prove this to you, Rory. Every single person in our church who is growing the most, who has a vibrant faith, literally living the vibrant life that we strive to form through Jesus, are involved in attending church more than just once a month, and they are also plugged into a serving team and a small group. If you can do all three of those things, your faith is going to take off because you're surrounding yourself with people who are chasing the same thing. It is so much harder to have a thriving faith in Jesus when you're doing it alone. Um, but if you can surround yourself with your people who are chasing the same thing, guess what? Relational neuroscience will back this up. You become more Christ-like when you're with Christ-like people.
Hmm.
That doesn't sound, I mean, that doesn't seem so profound, but literally, if you are who you're with, you
Yeah.
start doing all the things that they do. You start laughing the way that they do. You start saying the words that they do. You pick up the habits, so much to the point where so many studies have been done about this. People who get divorces tend to be friends with other couples who are on the brink of divorce, whereas people in healthy marriages tend to be friends with other people with healthy marriages, right? Or if people want to lose weight, what do? They surround themselves with other people who are either fit or are losing weight themselves, or people who are more overweight tend to be friends with other people who reinforce those same behaviors. Students who thrive in college tend to be friends with other students who thrive in college and vice versa. You are who you're with, right? So that is true all the way down to the spiritual level. So if we can get our students especially plugged in where they can find their people, they can find their community at the get-go of our church, um, the chances of them actually thriving in their faith and having that resilient faith just takes off. So that's the message we always talk about for next steps and trying to incorporate that. Plus,
That's
we do offer the You Need Friends spiritual friendship course every month where we go through the book too, and talk about the
ah,
principles as well. So that's more of an explicit way to do it. But yeah, that's the foundation of how we go about it.
love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. And you're not just preaching about it, you are facilitating it, it sounds like, because the serving team and the small group that you mentioned, these are
Mhm.
things that you as an organization put together
Mhm.
and start. I mean, tell us about how those work.
For sure. So in local churches, it looks different across the globe, but typically in the United States, um, there's a number of different programs that a church will offer outside of just your Sunday morning worship gathering, right? That's
Sure.
typically
Yeah.
the pinnacle. You show up to service on Sunday. Most churches have just one service. Sometimes there's multiple. But, church isn't just attending the event, right? It's gathering as a people. And when you look at Jesus in the Gospels, what does he do? He has a small group of 12 people that he really invests in the most. And so, in a similar way, like if you want to see people grow in their knowledge and wisdom of Jesus and to live it out, we want to place our people in these other smaller pockets where they can be known, where they can be seen, and they can be loved regardless of what they share, and they can pursue the good truths of God's word at the same time. You can't do that strictly on Sunday mornings. You just simply sit there for an hour, maybe you sing some songs, and you hear what I have to say for 30 minutes. But in small groups, it's when you get to dig into the book of Philippians together. It's when you get to confess, like, here's the sins I struggled with this past week. Here's what's really hard, and I need prayer. Or even just simply, uh, let's gather around a meal and do life together with other brothers and sisters in Christ, right? So that's the purpose of small groups. They can to be anywhere from 3 or 4 people to 12 to 15 people. They're kind of all over the place. Depends on how the group gets signed up, and they meet weekly with that end goal. Like we're going to try to pursue Jesus together, and it takes a number of different formats. Depends on the leader, but that's a small group piece. But then serving teams, like that's just groups of people who try to put on our weekly ministry. So we have like guest services ministries, people who are greeting and trying to, create a warm atmosphere on Sunday mornings,
Uh,
tech teams, worship teams, kid ministry teams, prayer teams, a number of ways of how you can serve the church. But we promote that primarily as a community opportunity. Because you're not just doing a bunch of stuff and utilizing your skills to, to serve the church ministry, but you're doing it alongside other believers too, and the kind of friendships you develop when you're doing kingdom work together, whether it's missions work or serving in the church or whatever, just tend to be of a different caliber, and so, and they often start there, and then they're more likely to get plugged into these other communities. So that's why we really choose, like, if you're looking for a next step at our church, you want to grow in your faith, you need to get involved in one of those two communities, if not both.
nice. So yeah, you're facilitating the entire thing. Okay. And then you said you're teaching the book.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, the book just came out this past spring, so this is brand new. But our goal is every fall and every spring to have a 10-week course where if people specifically want to grow on their friendships, like honestly, they say, I'm struggling with loneliness. I want to find other believers who I can befriend, pop into this class, because a small group can do a similar thing, but this intentionally resets every semester. It gives people a new chance to engage with it. And it could literally only be 4 or 5 people who sign up for this. And we just read through the book, we talk through the contents, but then by the end, the hope is that whoever was in that group for the 10 weeks of working through the book would then go on to practice what I call spiritual friend groups. In chapter 10 of my book outlines a specific small group structure that really puts the emphasis on confessing and being vulnerable with all the nitty-gritty stuff of your life that you never want to talk about.
Hmm.
Because it turns out, if you want to grow in your intimacy with other friendships, and this especially relates to men because this is so hard for us to do, at the end of the day, you have to reveal the stuff you don't want to talk about, the stuff that you're weak, the where you can finally take the mask off and say, I don't have it all together. Believe it or not, it's when you share that that grows you in your friendships. And when you can recognize Christ's presence in the midst of it, it breeds friendships that will blow your mind. That's the whole essence of spiritual friendship. So that's kind of the end goal. We get them to that, practice confession and vulnerability, and then send them off to be in groups to continue on after the class.
Nice. So it sounds like you're using the book um, and the friendship building and the groups to create the atmosphere to have the best chance of building discipleships.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow. Nice. Brilliant. Love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, that's so much better than just sitting somebody down and reading the Bible. You know what I mean? It's like you're just bringing it all together and you're giving them that, warm equals cool. You're giving them that through the group.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I'm guessing this is working pretty well for you.
It's been awesome, and we're uh here's a crazy stat for us, Rory. We're still continuing to build off like how to incorporate the book and the development of spiritual friendships into our ministry. That's still early, and it's applications, but May marks the beginning of a new fiscal year for us, and so we always have to do annual reporting. That's pretty typical of any business. Here's all of our stats, how much money we made, all the things. It's the exact
Yeah.
same thing for churches. We got to report to our denomination, all the stuff that happened. So I ran some stats and looked at some things, and the stuff that I found out was truly incredible. Um, we have an average attendance of 84 on a Sunday during the semesters. So sometimes we're over 100, sometimes we're under 70. We average out at 84 um, during the semesters when we have students there. And of those 84, we have 71 people involved in a serving team. 85% of our congregation is involved in serving on one of our ministry
Wow.
teams. So there's that. But then the other stat that blew my mind is that we had, out of our 9 small groups that were meeting, we had 81 members in those groups. So in other words, we had almost 100% of our weekly attendance involved in a group. Now, get this. we have a number of students who aren't around here on a Sunday, but they're plugged into small groups during the week because USD is a campus where a lot of people leave for the weekends to go to way better places than Vermillion, South Dakota. Like there's just nothing to do unless you're into the bar scene, and a lot of our students aren't into that, you know? So they just go home. They live in Sioux Falls or whatever. So that just goes to show that our young people are plugged into these smaller groups, and that is their church community for them in a lot of ways to have that. And so that was mind-boggling to me. Like it just kind of happened. But I also know we have a lot of emphasis on joining those groups, and so it's working pretty well. And my hope is that we can continue to let that be the case as we grow, and that we don't lose that passion of making sure people are plugged into some form of rubbing shoulders with other believers.
Yeah, that is strong, brother. I mean, that kind of participation, like percentage wise of the people. I mean,
Hmm.
number of people is number of people. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, if you have 5,000 people in your church, you know, and you have five, you know, who are in your group,
Hmm.
is that more impressive? I don't,
Yeah.
you know, but to have all of those folks like that, I mean, nearly 100% involved in the groups and everything, you're you're building a very strong foundation on
Hmm.
your church.
Yeah.
That's
It's
really
unheard
impressive.
of. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's been mind-boggling to see how that's continued to go. So
Wow. How long you been building the church?
we're coming so we've been in Vermillion for 4 years. So we started the pre-launch phase in June 1st of 2021. We launched we've been doing weekly services for almost 3 years, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
And you sounds like you're doing it right. I mean, that's
It's
wonderful, man.
we're all by the grace of God,
Of
for sure.
course. But I mean, nicely done. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Because you've taken everything he's given you and you're certainly putting it out there and using it. So way to go. All right, love this. Love the book. Let me ask you about the book itself,
Yeah.
because I mean, you wrote it, so of course you know how to put it into practice. Somebody else is putting together a movement, a ministry, something like that. They're reading this book. Is it a step by step, you know, sort of follow course type book, or is it, you know, basically ideas that you want to kind of take on, you know, that sort of thing? What's the makeup of the book itself, and how could somebody who's not you put it into practice?
Yeah, it's a beautiful combination. Like, and the beauty of this is I self-published this because I don't think any traditional publisher would like it, because it's either too academic for popular audiences or it's too popular for academic audiences. Because because my goal is to hit you with really like true, like complex truths of the reality of our social and relational and psychological design to be in community, you know?
Mm,
So like and cultural realizations of what's going on. So on one hand, there's an academic piece to it, but I really try, I'm a pastor, like I am an expert, or I try to be an expert in taking complex truths, but translating them to people in ways that are understandable. And there are far too many books that are way too academic, for the Christian audience, and way too many that are just filled with fluff that don't get to the heart of like actual issues and solving problems. So I wanted to do both. So you're going to find like this is going to reveal a lot of really deep information for you in a way that's easy to understand with direct next steps of what to do. And truly, I've designed it so that every chapter builds off of each other. Chapter one, you're learning about the loneliness epidemic, crazy stats of how lonely we are and exactly how loneliness is devastating to our minds, bodies, and souls. Chapter two, it's all about our design for our community, our radical God-given design to thrive and the benefits of having these significant relationships. But we have a cultural problem. All that's great, but we live in a culture that values individualism and isolationism. So chapter 3 and 4 really tries to pick apart our cultural issues of saying, we don't even need anyone else. I can pull myself up by my bootstraps, right? I can just make this
right.
happen. False, right? That's chapter 3. Then chapter 4 is how we're always on our phones. We're always staying at home. Like we don't want to talk to people anymore. We don't want anybody else in our life.
Yeah.
And so it really dives into that. That's part one of really just diagnosing the problem. Then part two, we're getting into the solutions. It starts with Jesus as our chiefest friend. That's chapter 5. And from there, with him as the template of our friendships, we know who then to befriend. So chapter 6 is looking at the formational power of our friendships. Chapter 7 is one of my favorite chapters. I have this tool called the friend zone matrix, and how you can use that to see like, you know, the depth of your current friendships, but also the spiritual quality of them. Are they carnal friendships that lead you towards sin? Are they worldly friendships that are pleasurable but really don't do much for your soul? Or
Hmm.
are they spiritual friendships and that they're growing you closer? So I mapped that out in chapter 7. Chapter 8 is all about, you're going to find these friendships in the church. So you need to plug into your local church, get involved. Like that's where these places start. You cannot be a Christian and not be a part of a church, no matter how much you think. That is propaganda that's more American than it is Christian. Jesus's vision is that you are plugged into his community. Go to church, be involved with it. That's chapter 8. But from there, if you really find those people at your church, you're going to cultivate spiritual friendships through confession and vulnerability. And that's all about chapter 9,
Hmm.
learning about how to reveal the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves and how that is such a necessary practice for us to cultivate community. And then finally, chapter 10, really, really practical. It gives you a structure for how you can meet with 3 to 5 of your friends and to practice confession and vulnerability in a way that really can help you be heard, to pull that out on a regular basis. Because would you believe it? It's not natural for us to talk about that stuff. So we almost need a structure that holds us accountable to it. That's the whole book right there. Everything builds off of each other, and I hope that it can be really practical to diagnosing the issue, but also giving you clear steps of not leaving you drowning in your loneliness and how you can actually solve this for you.
Yeah, I mean I like it because it comes from a leadership standpoint. You can almost imagine someone, another pastor in another church going, okay, how do I implement this?
Yeah.
You know,
hmm
now I know that your focus is on Gen Z folks, but is any part of this intended to, help kingdom build for, other pastors?
Absolutely. In the introduction, I make clear, like, you know, for the sake of writing a book, you have to select your niche audience.
Of course.
But I give the clarification that I'm writing, from a Christian perspective, but if you're struggling with loneliness, you're gonna glean something from this book that'll help you. Yes, Gen Zers are our loneliest generation right now, so I kind of have them in the purview. But these issues are all struggling with us. You and I both look at our phone way too much. We all struggle with
Oh yeah.
confession and vulnerability ourselves. Like all of us can glean from this. There's some uniquenesses towards Gen Z, but we can all pull things regardless of your generation, regardless of your gender. And of course, I also write it to pastors too, to implement this in your own churches, whether you're a youth pastor, college pastor, lead pastor, your church needs friends. And in the midst of so many of society's issues right now and our people's issues, a lot of it just comes down to we're on defense mode because we don't have good friends to confide in.
Hmm.
That's truly the source of a lot of it. So knowing that this is kind of under the water, maybe it might give us some new lenses to think through how we do our kingdom work.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course you have to have, your target market, for who you're looking for when you're writing a book, but your book just has a lot of different uses to it. I
Yeah.
can kind of see it being put into play in a lot of different ways. One of the things that I have noticed is that it seems like every congregation that I come in contact with anywhere, they're all trying to reach a new group, hit a new demographic, bring in young people, grow and that type of thing. And I want to be honest, one of the things that just keeps ringing through my head as folks keep coming on the show and I keep talking to them and everything else is they don't have a plan.
Hmm.
It's like, I really am going to do this. Okay, high five. How?
Yeah.
You know,
Uh-huh.
and you're sitting here with like, here's my plan. It's
Uh-huh.
published. And I'm just kind of going, first of all, well done. Second of all, you have a course that's going on. My entrepreneur mindset's going off right now, so please pardon me.
Mm. Mm.
But I've been doing all this for way too long. You are perfecting, if you will, a course on how to implement this. Are you getting ready to like launch this to other churches and maybe market it to fundraise and everything
Oh,
else?
oh, Rory, you're in my brain, man. You're in
Okay, I'm just because I'm getting
my
this.
yes. I have a number of things. First of all, you're speaking my language. It grinds my gears because a lot of pastors have great vision, but they're terrible planners. Um, your vision means nothing if you don't have a system to actually get there, right? It's like searching for any destination you want on Apple Maps or Google Maps, but you never press go for it to map out the route. You just browse at all the
Yeah.
cool things in New York City. Oh, I'd love to go there. Actually prepared to make the move and to have the destination. beta testing about what it looks like to fully incorporate this on a church level. In fact, I really do try to promote my book as, it's great for small groups. Obviously, so many churches say small groups are great for cultivating community. So why not read a book about community? I put discussion questions in the book, so it's easy for you to just naturally plug that in. So that's easy, right? But I want to get to a point where I can offer churches a pathway to offer what I call spiritual friendship cohorts. It's very similar to what I did for my dissertation, but the rough sketch of it is you start with this 10-week course. You could do it faster if you wanted to do 2 chapters a week, but essentially for the fall semester, you're just simply getting your people together to talk about the content of this book, right? To wrestle with it, but like not only just to discuss the content, but also to slowly get to know each other. You're forming friendships in the midst of that. You're figuring out who clicks with who. You're sharing the parts of your life that the surface level stuff that you can connect over. Like, oh, you love to play chess too. Oh, you love black coffee too. Oh man, like that's a part of it. The first semester, all about just getting to know each other while also
Yeah.
discussing the purpose of this. But then part two of the cohort is to spend the spring semester in these spiritual direction groups or spiritual friend groups, where from that cohort, you then pick 2 to 4 other people to meet with biweekly, to actually do life with each other and to have these hard conversations of confession and vulnerability, in hopes that it's going to give you the deep, intimate friendships. Because here's the thing, like, the loneliness epidemic isn't just there's a million people who just have no friends. No, the vast majority of people have friends. They're just not satisfying. They're not deep friends. And that's where the hunger for, I think, a lot of the loneliness epidemic is. They are hungry for deep personal friendships who know them well, deeply, intimately. And that's where this really tries to get you. So, yeah, trying to figure out exactly how to market it in that way, how to put these packages together. Obviously, trying to start a speaking business as well, where I can, share about this content, sell the book, but also these spiritual friendship cohorts. Um, just got to figure out the timelines for how to roll all that out. But that is the dream of being able to package this in a way where churches all across the world can be able to use this content to form community.
Nice. Nice.
Mhm.
I almost could just like feel that coming. It was just like,
Mhm.
this sounds an awful lot like, yeah, okay, good. I
Something there.
appreciate you just being open and honest and authentic about it. Like, you know what? Yep. That's
Uh,
exactly what we're doing. So I love that. And I mean, I wish you nothing but the best with it. And it sounds like you got a really good thing going. Congrats on that. I can't wait to read this book. I really can't. I do my absolute best to try and read the book before the interview. I didn't have time. I'm so sorry.
Dude, you and me both, man.
It's like,
There's always too much to read, too much to get done.
oh my goodness, yeah. So it's that's the only bad part about doing like 9 interviews a day. If I have a whole bunch of authors, I'm like, no way I can get 9 books read
Got
in
to
three
select
days.
which one for
Yeah,
sure.
it just doesn't work. So, but no, I love that. So, all right, as as we kind of bring this all together here, the why don't I want to make sure we cover it. So make sure before we get into wrapping things up or final thoughts or anything like that, let everybody know best way to find this, best way to reach you. Let's get all that out now while they're still fresh. You guys are all still paying
Yes.
attention, right? So
I
get
was
your
gonna
pens out.
say, if
Here we
you've
go.
made it to the end, perks to you. It's hard to listen to a podcast. It's over, 30 minutes. But if you want to get a copy, just search for You Need Friends by Jake Thurston on Amazon. That's the primary place where I sell it, Amazon.com. Or you can visit youneedfriends.com. That's my book's website. You can kind of look a little bit more into just the stats surrounding the loneliness epidemic. You can find links to the book there, as well as a number of other resources, other podcasts I've done, teachings I've done over this, recommended reading over this content. It's all there on youneedfriends.com. So those are the places where you can go to find it. Or if you're one of those people where you only buy from local bookstores, you hate Amazon with a passion, email me at jake@youneedfriends.com. Again, that's jake@youneedfriends.com, and I will personally mail you a copy, as long as you can cover the shipping, and we can make that happen. So shipping and
Awesome.
handling costs.
Awesome. Very well thought out. He's got all his bases covered. And then I know on your bio you had a Instagram that you were sending people to.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, and that's
Yep.
the at pastor dot Jake Thurston.
Correct. Yep. You can
Gotcha.
find me on Instagram at pastor.jakethurston.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Excellent. All right, Jake, listen, I appreciate your time, your vision, my goodness, your energy, brother, everything that you brought today. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank
And,
you.
and I love what you're doing. So 100% congratulations and good luck from me. Um, but you unpacked a lot too. So let me kind of give you the floor for a minute or two. And let me just ask you, is there anything that we didn't talk about? Or is there anything that, we brought up, but you want to drive home a little harder? Anything that maybe you want to just like a last nugget or, leave for the audience, that
Yeah,
type of thing. I'm going to give you the floor for a couple of minutes. It's all yours, brother. Go for it.
for sure. I will leave you with kind of the final talking point I do on pretty much all of my other podcast interviews I've been doing when they ask me this question. Um, it's just simply this. You need to have the courage to take the first step. What I mean by that is if you are one who is struggling with loneliness, yeah, you have connections, maybe you have a family, and and your marriage is okay. It's good. You're not divorced, but it's not like, the honeymoon phase anymore. You work with a bunch of your dudes and you shoot the breeze, talk about work, whatever. But deep down, you have all this pent-up trauma from your childhood or something that happened to you that you were ridiculed for being weak. Um, you name it. I'm speaking to the guys here. It is so, so hard for us to take the mask off, for us to take the armor off. But you're fooling nobody. Like the whole idea of you being fully independent as a sign of your strength is a lie. The truth is, interdependence is a sign of our strength as a species. Is our ability to rely on each other, and to confess the things that are hard, and I recognize, especially for a lot of guys, like, if you're ever ridiculed for showing emotion, for, reeling in your weakness or whatever, to say, just suck it up, pull yourself up, don't let anybody get near. That is a lie. And so if you're hungering for those friendships and you're hungering to be known, listen, so is everybody else. And what's so easy is for us to just peel back and say, I just want someone to reach out to me. I want someone to reach out to me, right? I'm tired of being alone. I want someone else to say, hey, would you come over? If everybody else is saying that, are you going to be the one who actually has the courage to say, hey, can we get together? Can we talk about stuff? Can we, can we vibe, as the youths say, can we vibe together or whatever, so like you take that with however that applies to you. But that's often the truth I leave people with, is that you have to be the one willing to take the first step. Why wait for someone else to do it? You need to be the one to take the courage and reach out, be vulnerable, and start cultivating those friendships. And I trust me when I say this, when you can find those people who can deal with all of your crap and love you anyway, you will be set free to become a person that you never dreamed of. I truly believe that. So there it is. That's what I got.
That was awesome.
Mm.
That was a
Mm.
great way to wrap this all up. And yeah, one of the best parts about talking to you, Jake, is there is no doubt in my mind or anybody who's listening to this or watching this how much this matters to you.
Mm.
I mean, you're wearing your emotions right on your sleeve, brother, and I love that. I love
Thank you.
that. I think it's the best way to connect with somebody.
Yeah.
You put yourself out there first and you lead like that. They're much more apt to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
It's
keep doing what
awesome.
you're doing. Keep doing
Thank
what you're
you.
doing.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Love it. Jake Thurston, pastor of Resilient Church, author of You Need Friends, Reclaim Your God-Given Design for Community and Remedy Your Loneliness for Good. Folks, you've heard all of it today. I don't need to say anymore. You get it. You got it. Uh, Jake Thurston, sir, thank you for being on today, man.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Rory.
Loved it. Folks, it's been another awesome episode of the Power Man podcast. And the reason that we bring powerful men like this on the show with powerful messages like this is because we are joined together in hoping that you will be able to handle and succeed in your quest that you're on, to be a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today, to be a better protector, a better provider, a better leader tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you and the reason that we hope that for you and we try to help is because you're worth it. You have value. And at some point, You just have to believe that. Until
Mhm.
next time.